Hi, friends. Thanks for joining us. Please smash that subscribe button. It helps the channel grow. Benny, where can they find us on social media?
Yeah, you can find us, Ray Benny Sports. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and check us out also on Discord and Reddit. And leave us a rating on your favorite podcast provider.
It's all about the Bombers today, except for at the very end, we're going to talk about the East Final. But we're going to the Grey Cup, fourth year in a row. Let's talk about the West Final. We'll talk about the Grey Cup on Tuesday and Thursday. So join us there for our Montreal 2020 review / Grey Cup preview. But let's start off with the West Final. Let's start off with some of these factors in Bombers winning. Let's just start off with the crowd. That was crazy. Fifth sellout in a row. Like even watching the replay on TV, it's like we were that loud. Yeah, it was nuts. See, my voice, it's screwed.
It was crazy in there. Like the noise was just nuts. Like it was deafening the whole time. And it's like, even, they would have commercial breaks and, we'd start up cheering and yelling because we thought, okay, the play is going on, realize it's commercial break and still continue to go right through to the end of it. Right. And then even on offense, you could hear a pin drop when the Bombers were on offense. I mean, there was a few times where the BC sucks chants were going, but one on offense, it was like a pin drop in there. There was no noise at all.
What other factors were there in this win?
Wow, defense, man. I don't know. You can go through that whole list of D and what they did and dominated. Willie Jefferson, Jeffcoat, multiple sacks. What did we end up with? 10, right?
10, yeah.
9. So, yeah, that defense was swarming and all over Vernon Adams and the BC Lions. Minus that Hail Mary. I mean, they shut them down pretty good.
Yeah, 2 long passes, both to McInnes. One, a beautiful catch by McInnes in the middle of the field. Went over 2 defenders with that ball.
Yeah,
great throw by VA. But that fluky lottery touchdown where, you got to bat it down to the ground straight or else someone might catch it. And that's what happened.
Yeah, and the unfortunate thing is the Bombers are just going to kill the clock, right? And then they took that time count violation, which lost the down, which ended up having them punting and giving BC time to even drive down that field. And like you say, the knock it down, he hit it, and it's like they all kind of just watched it. And McInnes is like, yeah, I'll just take this. So
knock it down to the ground.
Play.
The O-line, of course.
Yeah.
And as to point specifically at someone on the O-line, if anyone needed a reason or a reminder as to why Jamarcus Hardrick got the East nominee, I'm going to steal the words of Sam Perkins. We had guys in there who had a stat line of 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. And I'm specifically talking about Matthew Betts. The best defensive player in the West, probably in many opinion. Hardrick locked him down. He was not a factor.
Yeah.
Did anyone hear his name? No one talked about him in the crowd. I don't know if they talked about him on TV, but they were mollywhopping BC's D-line. We talked about that last week, punching him in the face, wearing him down, and that's exactly what they did.
Well, that first drive, right, where they took, what did they have, 80 yards rushing, Oliveira on the ground.
70 yards total.
And then they just bullied that ball into the end zone as well. Like they were just dragging those guys or pushing those guys back. It was a crazy first drive by the Bombers, and they stuck it. They gave the few throws of Claros just didn't work out. He just kept handing it to Oliveira, and he did it, and he did the job. And that O-line opened up some big holes for him as well. That was a great drive. Wow.
Right up the gut.
Yeah, and they bullied him. Like there was multiple times where he was stopped, and they pushed that pile, to get first downs or that touchdown. It was crazy, man. Yeah. It was
that first drive set the tone. And if you look at that touchdown specifically, you can see Jamarcus Hardrick was the caboose on that train. He had that extra push. And on the side, you see Pat Neufeld pancaking Josh Woods. Yeah. It was just a dominant physical drive that set the tone of the game. I was convinced that BC felt that they were screwed. They knew they were in for a long day after that drive.
Yeah, there was guys backing off, not even trying to go for some of the tackles after that. They settled down that BCD. They actually played a decent game after that and kept the Bombers kind of in check on offense because Oliveira had most of his yards on that first drive. And then I think ended with 20 maybe after that, 30 after that.
30.
Or something. Yeah, so yeah, they shut it down afterwards, and the Bombers needed the passing game to kind of get going, and it kind of struggled throughout the game. Claros didn't have the best game. Lawler had a few nice catches. Dembski dropped the ball on a nice pass, and they were, which would have put them in BC territory and all that. So not the greatest of games by the offense, but they got the job done. And Sergio Castillo missing a couple.
Gotta love that heavy set.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, on the O line. Gotta love that heady set. Any other factors in the Bombers win?
Well, the block punt, man. Nick Hallett, right? Just Nick Hallett. Sorry, I was almost going to say Noah Hallett. Just a great play, and the Bombers again. The offense wasn't always humming, but that was a huge play, touchdown. He blocked it and then recovered it and took it in for a touchdown. So that was a huge factor and gave the Bombers the edge. I mean, that's what they ended up basically winning by. So great play by Nick Hallett.
Nick Hallett was my most underrated Bomber of the year. Shout out to him. Of course, Brady Oliveira was a factor in that. Like we already said, the first drive he had a workman like 109 yards, because other than that drive, he 21 carries for 109. That's a strong 5 point and a bit that he had to work for. You mentioned defense. I'm going to add on to defense with Richie Hall. I mentioned last week about these matchups with Richie Hall against what's his name, Jordan Maximich.
Yeah.
On BC, and he and the front seven and the way he designed that was amazing. The things he had Malik Clemens doing, adding him to the blitz, that great sack by Brian Cole. He had 3 guys rushing, and he added him as a 4th on a delayed blitz, and he got to VA, and that pretty much capped the game. He just he had him figured out. He had him figured out. It was crazy.
Yeah. They kept Vernon Adams in the pocket. They didn't let him run. And then there was time. I mean, obviously they had tons of sacks, but even on the times they didn't, the coverage downfield was just fantastic. We were kind of shocked, or at least I was, when it was noted that Winston Rose was out of this game and Jamal Parker was going to be playing instead. And I was like, "Ooh, that's a gutsy call," kind of thing, and it worked out. Like that, the Evan Holm was great. He had that last touch interception, and then Demario Houston getting that big interception as well. Which led to a Bomber field goal. So that was big, especially because BC was kind of moving the ball in that drive. He stepped up. So those guys in the
secondary.
DBs, secondary, were fantastic as well.
Yeah, they're playing some solid physical football. And we talk about the 10 sacks that the Bombers got. A couple of those sacks were because of coverage sacks. Like there's one at the top of the third quarter where Jeff Cota, I think he got it. That was a coverage sack. Where Thomas and Walker were able to collapse the middle because VA was looking 1, 2, 3 option, nothing there, and that's too much time. Then you're done. It was beautifully called game by Richie Hall. In the secondary, they were just never out of place. Demario Houston was there to jump on that ball. Oh, still excited about that, man.
And the linebackers, man, they all got involved in the sacks as well. Malik Clemens, Kyrie Wilson, and what's Reda Karamdi? I don't know if I said his name right. Yeah, but they're all fantastic, and they got the job done too. It's like when they brought extra pressure, those guys did not miss. Especially Cramdy on he ran right through, and Vernon Adams tried to make a move. And if he gets away from him, he probably gets a decent play away there. But Cramdy he dropped them. It was great.
And we're gonna need those guys next week because that was, man. Well, I texted you at the end of that second half. We talked about that long bomb, and then we see this cart rolling on the Bombers sideline, and we see Adam Bighill on there. And I texted you right away. I'm like, this is possibly the worst way that the Bombers could go into the half.
Yeah.
And then another factor in this game, their veteran leadership, because they came out in the second half almost seeming unfazed by losing such a veteran of that presence.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I was worried. I'm not gonna lie. After they got the Bombers dominated that first half and we're up, but then all of a sudden they're going into halftime only up 18-10, and you're thinking, oh crap, okay, Big Hill's out, and I was watching him on the bench there. He's getting hugs and everything from guys. I'm like, this is not good. And then eventually the cart came out to take him at the end of the half, but yeah, I thought we were in trouble at that point. But yeah, like you said, the veteran leadership came out. They settled things down, and they didn't look back. And BC ended up getting a field goal in the second half, I think.
Yeah.
That was it, right?
Yeah. And unfortunately for BC, they also had to deal with some injuries because just before I think we saw Big Hill, we saw the tent go up on the BC side. And I think that was for TJ Lee. And then Keon Hatcher also left with all 3 of them might be Achilles. So
yeah, that's not good on that field. Like took them all down. We haven't heard anything yet on Big Hill, but yeah, I doubt he's playing probably next weekend.
We'll see. Any other factors in the win there?
No. Unfortunately, it's not a factor in the win or anything. But Castillo is going to have to end up being a little bit better. that first field goal, I don't know what he was doing. If it was a chip shot attempt, but he was so short on that thing. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And then the doink.
Jeez.
But yeah, we need him to step up because I mean, there's a reason why we got rid of Leggio for Castillo, right? So, but other
Yeah.
than that, yeah.
And on the doink, it was funny. You're in the crowd, and the guy who does the sound effects and music started playing the Mexican music. There's a field goal, and you're like, he missed it, dude.
Yeah.
Everyone makes mistakes. We can't be perfect, right?
No.
Also, you know, a factor in the game, he didn't get many receptions, but the receptions he got were big. I'm not talking about Kenny Lawler, because what he did was big too, and the interference calls he got. But Dembski, the minimal receptions he got were big, either momentum shifters or they brought some energy to the team. You know, he
Yeah.
has great hands. He's a great route runner, but the fight that he gets after the ball is incredible. Like,
Well, considering he's also a game time decision, right? So he's
yeah,
got to be hurting a bit. He wasn't shying away from that physicalness or anything like that. So yeah,
props.
hopefully these guys can all get healthy by next weekend or better healthy, and hopefully Dalton Schoen is in the mix too.
Then you know, you mentioned Sergio Castillo, which is not a factor in the win, but which is not very encouraging. I mentioned Richie Hall, but the play calling by Buck Pierce got a little slow or predictable. I understand that you're depending on the run, but you got to be a little more creative on the run. And I know you don't have Bailey or Dembski to run the ball probably, but you know, maybe just be a little more creative. I thought in the running game and distributing the ball. So I think that got a little stale from my view from the stands. I don't know that the play call definitely within the 5 yard line for that touchdown should have been a touchdown. It looked like a broken play with Brukop. I don't know, but yeah, sometimes I was questioning like what's going on out there.
Well, even the one it was in the second half, they were up 5.
Hmm.
They ended up eventually kicking a field goal, but they were on the 3, right? I mean, you can sneak that thing 3 times with Prukop and get a yard each time and get the touchdown. And they tried to get a little bit too fancy. They couldn't get there with Oliveira on the first run, and then Prukop's run was terrible. I was yelling for them to go for it. I know the right call was to kick the field goal, but I was more frustrated by the fact that they didn't punch that in the first place, right? Going up 8 is obviously the right move, but I was like, man, you got to finish this, because that probably puts the game out of reach and away and does not
Oh
give
yeah,
DC any chance that they're going to come back in this one, right? So
they
yeah, I
definitely
agree
left.
with you on that.
They
Sorry, go
left
ahead.
two. No, they left 2 touchdowns on the field at
Yeah,
least. And I thought in the last episode, I thought they would kick their ass, and they did dominate their ass. And if they would have gotten those touchdowns, for sure they would have kicked their ass on the scoreboard.
yeah,
But that didn't happen. They can't do that again, Montreal.
no,
They
at
get inside the
Montreal.
30, pretty much. You got to score a touchdown.
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh. Anything else? Any other factors in the win?
No, I don't know. I feel like we covered quite a bit there.
We talked about a lot of the memorable plays already. That first TD,
Yeah.
you know, that was a memorable. We talked about the interception by Demario Houston. Anything else memorable that you remember, like the play wise?
Again, we talked about the block punt. Memorable play in that one.
Huge.
For me, it was just some of the sacks, like just Jeffcoat and Jefferson, and Jeffcoat looked fresh out there. I don't know, sometimes on some of those sacks, like he was so quick in that backfield. And it looked like Vernon Adams might get away, and all of a sudden Jeffcoat has him and wrapped him up and down. So there's just those sacks by those, the knockdown balls by Willie Jefferson too. Like he was just in there. Those guys were feeling it in that game. And we talked about that D-line, which hasn't looked the greatest sometimes, but they were dominant. Even Ricky Walker was in there as well. So
Ricky Walker was having a monster game
Yeah.
in the middle. Like,
Oh, yeah.
other than that big run by Mizell, like he rushed for what, 30 yards? And
So,
that
yeah.
first one was 20. Give
Yeah.
me a break. The shout out to him, Ricky Walker. Crazy. And the way they got pressure on VA, even when they didn't get to him, they were getting pressure on him. Jeez.
You can pretty much shout out every guy that played on D that night. They all did something great.
Yeah.
Like they were dialed in. Richie Hall put them in the right positions, and yeah, they just finished it, man. It's great to watch. Like they say, defense wins championships, right? And both those games, defense is where the stars.
And Brandon Alexander, like he's not on the stat sheet a lot on this game, but VA kept looking down because they love looking down the field for those big plays.
Yeah.
And you just see Brandon Alexander chilling there. He's like, I'm waiting for that ball. Go ahead. I challenge you.
Yeah.
So he's that type of player. You can't just put in the air and hope for it the way the Bombers are playing.
No.
So, or the front seven were playing. Wow, I'm getting excited already. My voice is going again.
It's crackling.
Crackling away. Who are your prime playoff performers? And again, we've named a couple, but who would you really like to highlight here?
I'm going to go with the Jeffs again. Back to them, Willie Jefferson, Jeffcoat. I think they were the straw that stirred the drink in this one. Bringing their pressure, getting Jefferson or Adams down, even being in his face when they didn't get him down, and making him throw something quick or panic and all that stuff. So to me, they were the prime performers.
Now, the first one I'm going to do is Jamarcus Hardrick. I love the line. I'm going to take an O-line first, obviously, and he was dominant. Like I said, Matthew Betts was nowhere to be found in this game. In the run, we would usually not, but especially in the pass, he got zero. So shout out to Jamarcus Hardrick. I already mentioned Malik Clemens. He was all over the field when he had the opportunities. He was spying, he was sacking, he was dropping back in coverage when the other guys were blitzing. He was fun to watch. And you already mentioned him, Nick Hallett. He was one more of mine.
Love that you can name a lot of guys, man. Brady Oliveira just pounding that ball and helping, have that BCD kind of sit back a little bit more and be worried about getting pounded a little bit more by that O-line and Oliveira. So it was a great game all around, man. I mean, obviously the offense has to be better to me, or it has to be a little bit more consistent in this game, and especially in the Grey Cup, because that Montreal D is going to be ferocious. And they're going to be coming after this O-line again, right? And then to me, Lemon and Sankey and all those guys are actually playing really well. So they're going to be all over it. And hey, they're going to come into this game the underdogs, right? Everyone's going to pick the Bombers probably to win this game. They're going to feed off of that, and just like they did when they knocked off Toronto. So they're gonna embrace that role.
They are riding high right now.
Yeah, they are.
They are monster slayers. But we'll talk about those monsters in a second. You have a good time at the game. What was your experience like in the upper deck? I believe you were like up there.
Yeah.
That side, you were across from me. I'm in 112. How would you have a good time? How'd you have a good time? What was your time over there?
Besides getting that wind in my face and body for the whole time, it was a nice night, really, compared to what it could have been. But it did get chilly for a bit. It was loud up there. It was raucous. Like the crowd was into it. Like we were standing quite a bit in that fourth quarter. And everyone was just giving her like the noise. Like I said, the noise just did not stop when BC had that ball. And it was very disruptive. So yeah, it was a good time up there.
Yeah, it was loud. Like I could feel the loud, and some seats are open in front of you and around you because some people are standing in the concourse. Because I like standing sometimes too. So the seat in front of me was open, so I was beating that thing like a drum. As you can tell, my voice is gone. Had a good time. Other than I'm always gonna find something to complain about. You know me. That halftime band. What was going on there? That was a vibe killer. Like you look at what Toronto had at their halftime show. I can't even remember the band, but it was better than that. And no, it's not hate towards the band, but they're the regular season band. Like this is the playoffs. There's extra pyro, extra graphics on the scoreboard, new graphics for the playoffs. Come on. There should have been a better show at halftime. That was horrible.
Who would you have liked to see?
Oh, give me some of that Maestro Fresh West.
There you go. Who was the guy playing?
Or Fresh IE, Fresh IE, because we're from Winnipeg.
Who did the concert at the basketball game? The Sea Bears.
Maybe that was Fresh IE.
No, it was. I can't remember who the heck it was when I went to that game. Oh well, never mind.
But they should have had someone hyped. It should have been different. Should have been a different feel to it.
You want that crowd to kind of get hyped and get into it. I get that. Yeah.
My friend behind me was like, "I'd rather be watching the dogs."
Oh, jeez.
My friend said that, not me. Not me. And anything else you want to talk about your experience? It was just a great time.
Yeah, it was a good time. Yeah, the last we've gotten to 3 the West Finals, right? Because one of them we couldn't go to, or am I thinking wrong? Oh, okay. No, sorry. The first one they weren't here. It was in Calgary, right? When their first Grey Cup. So yeah. So we've been to the last 3. It's been a fantastic time at each one of them, and love going to them, and love getting rowdy and yelling and screaming and just cheering, man.
Yeah. To continue success and more.
It's a good time to be a Bomber fan right now. We had some lean years and some tough years right now. And, at some point it's probably going to go back to that, right? Because it always just goes for teams like that. So it's a fun time to be a Bomber fan, and hopefully they can finish this one off.
It's true. Every team goes, even Calgary. For the longest time, we're like, Calgary will never lose, especially with John Huffnagel around. But what the heck?
Yeah, every team gets it, except for Saskatchewan.
Montreal had some bad years after the Calvillo years. Talk
Exactly. Yeah.
about thin years. Remember Mike Sherman?
Oh yeah, they had a few bad coaches. It wasn't just Sherman. Oh my God, that team. Yeah, after Trestman basically left and Cavillo was done. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Gong
Sherman
show.
can Sherman couldn't even take off his headset that one time properly.
Yeah.
Thoughts on the East Final Montreal defense, right?
That's what we talked about. We talked about Montreal's chance to win this game was that defense. If you look at it, Montreal's offense really didn't do a lot in this game. They didn't have to. 2 interceptions, returned for touchdowns, 2 out of the many interceptions. Another kick return taken back. That's 21 points right there. And the one touchdown Montreal ended up getting, besides that last one, was off a turnover, which then got aided by a penalty off the field goal attempt. And that's when they actually scored. So, yeah, the Montreal offense didn't have to do anything, but a dominant performance by that Montreal D. Holy Chad Kelly.
Yeah, they won the game. Bombers just got 10 sacks in the game. Montreal 7 sacks against.
Yeah.
They got to fix that, or the Bombers are going to eat them up, because hopefully Zach Caleros will not turn the ball over that amount of times. Like, not enough people, shout out to Jason Moss, shout out to Cody Fajardo, but not enough people are talking about Noel Thorpe. I mentioned this guy a couple months ago and how great this defense he put together. And since then, they've added Daryl Sankey and have gotten better. Yeah. So, and you know what? Shout out to your boy Machocha for getting the pieces.
Yeah, I'm quite shocked that they ended up making it where they are now, especially the way they started, especially the way that offense has looked. And I didn't really have a lot of faith in Jason Moss being a good coach on this too. But we talked about him last week when we did a bit of a review on this game or preview. Marc-Antoine Decoy with that interception on that first drive that Toronto was about to score or get something, and then he takes it back 101 yards. And that, to me, probably flipped this whole game, because Chad Kelly, after that, imploded. And some of the interceptions he threw was like, what are you even doing? What are you even seeing? So, yeah, dominant.
Who was getting pressure on him in that too? Like, he panicked and he sidearmed it in a weird throw, and Decoy just stepped up front and then went.
Yeah, big mistake, because you're about to possibly get 3 or 7 in that, and then you're giving up 7 instead, and 101-yard return, right? So,
yeah.
Carlos is going to have to be on top of his game, because these guys, and Decoy even took one back on the Bombers earlier this year, right? So,
yeah, you got to watch it.
Yeah, that D.
Yeah, and see that the Bombers have only let them score a field goal, and maybe another one total.
Yeah, I don't expect it much out of this Montreal offense at all. The only way they possibly score is off a turnover, and they get great field position. I think the Bombers D can dominate this Montreal offense.
Yeah,
but I also think Montreal's D will cause havoc for Bombers. So
they'll definitely stack the box.
Yeah, they'll stop the run, right? BC couldn't do it early, and then they figure out kind of a way. Maybe that gave Montreal a bit of a blueprint on how to do it. But yeah, they're going to have to run the ball again. Oliveira is going to have to be on top of his game. That O-line's going to have to be good.
More heavy set.
Yep.
Ooh, as well. Yeah. Oh, they played some of that, and that was fun to watch.
Yeah.
We'll talk about Chad Kelly in a second, but I think a big reason of his implosion was the mismanagement of the roster by Ryan Dinwiddie. Like, once they've clinched the East, Chad Kelly barely played. He was held out of the most emotionally charged game of the season against Winnipeg in hostile territory, the biggest game of the year for them other than Hamilton and Labor Day. He played sparingly in October, which means the other QBs were taking reps in practice. I honestly believe a lot of the blame on this is a mismanagement of the roster by Ryan Dinwiddie.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah. It's so hard to figure out what to do, right? Because if he plays these guys and Kelly takes a hit and is out for the year, then you're questioning, hey, why did you leave him in this game? But yeah, that Bomber game, that was too early. He should have played that game. And he could have faced a Bomber D and just kind of figured things out, which may have helped him in this game as well, right? To be ready for that kind of pressure D and guys coming and all that kind of stuff. So it's a tough position, but unfortunately for Toronto, they clinched this thing way too early, and they played 2 months without really any meaningful games. Whereas Montreal was on the other way, right? They were battling for second place. They were rolling, and they just kept getting hotter and hotter. Right now, they're very hot.
Yeah, that coach was definitely, I don't know, horrible.
You learn from your situations, right? I mean, we did it in 2001 where Richie had to rest some guys, decided to rest some guys, and it didn't help us going into the playoffs or the Grey Cup in that year either. It's tough. It's a tough situation. The Bombers did it last year, even, right? And they just did not look as good as they could have in that Grey Cup against Toronto. It's
Yeah.
tough when you clinch things way too early, man. It's so
It's
hard
crazy.
it's so hard to figure out what to do, because if you make a mistake, leave a guy in there, he gets hurt, then you're questioned for that too, right? So
Absolutely.
oh, just you need better competition in the CFL in the East, at least.
Yeah. What a weak division. You know, yes, I get it. Any given Sunday, anyone, but that's a huge part of the factor of their record. They played
Yeah.
in a weak division early.
Yeah.
Come on now. It's a truth. Like, I'm not lying. Edmonton is probably better than the bottom two teams in that division. And there's 4 teams in that division.
Yeah. Oh,
Come
yeah.
on now. So Chad Kelly not shaking hands. What are your hands on that? What are your thoughts on that?
Terrible look. I mean, I know not necessarily a lot of players in football shake hands a lot, but you're the starting quarterback. You have to go over there, at least shake hands with Fajardo even at some point, and a few guys here and there. You don't have to stay on the field forever, but he should definitely be. And you're the face of the Argos franchise. You should be standing up for it at this point, right? So I feel like he should have been shaking hands at some point, or with the players in Montreal.
Yeah, I think a lot of fans are being a little hard on him, saying he's classless as a person. I think making personal attacks is a bit unnecessary. The guy had a horrible game. We know he's a very emotional guy.
Yeah.
And what makes you good also makes you bad.
Yeah.
And he was in the moment, just like he was in the moment in the Grey Cup when he made that big play. Emotionally, he was steady for that team. He brought in confidence.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, he had the worst game of his life. He was embarrassed. And part of that to blame is on Dinwiddie because he hadn't played a significant game in a month and a bit. So I'm not going to attack his personality. I've seen veteran quarterbacks leave the field, and it's the playoffs. A lot of these guys are celebrating with their teammates. So maybe you look over, they're celebrating, I'm gone. Who knows? We don't see every clip of what he's doing. So take it easy on the guy. Yeah, he missed a handshake, but I really don't think it's a big deal.
No, I wouldn't attack the guy for it. He'll learn from it. Like, I know he's 29 or so. Like he's up there in age, but really this is his first starting quarterback gig, really, right? Since turning up as a pro. So he'll learn from this situation. Next time he'll probably do it a different way. But yeah, let the guy grow, let the guy figure it out. It's not the end of the world.
Or maybe that's his thing. He just doesn't do it.
Maybe. We'll see.
Yeah. I'm getting care less.
He was terrible, though. He was terrible.
Oh, he had a horrible game. MOP from the East.
Oh, jeez.
We gonna give a collective shout out to Andrew Harris, maybe, because he is officially retired. Looks by from his post there. Thoughts on Andrew Harris?
Great career, man. He definitely helped turn Winnipeg around into Grey Cup champions. I was always, even when they when BC beat Winnipeg back in what was 2011 or whatever it was, he was a big part of that. So it kind of sucked seeing a Winnipeg guy beat up on his Bombers, and even last year in the Grey Cup, right? So he beat us twice, but when he was here, he was fantastic. Unfortunately, he didn't get much in the yesterday's game. Like, he only had 2 carries and not even a catch. So kind of crappy way for him to end up going out, but great career. And you know what? I thank him for coming to Winnipeg, and I thank him for bringing us some Grey Cups.
Oh, one of the best Canadian players in the history of the game, not just of the franchise, in the history of the game. Future Hall of Famer in the Blue Bomber organization, future Ring of Honor member, future CFL Hall of Famer. And he is the reason why the CFL needs a ratio. I'm sick of these people online saying the ratio is holding the game back. No, it's not. There's enough starters that are good enough to play. The ratio is about the guys who start on special teams.
Yeah.
Andrew Harris was not a starter from day one. Chris Walby was not a starter from day one. Nick Dembski was a specials teamer, not a starter from day one. But because the teams had to have Canadians, quality Canadians, these guys got on a roster, got an opportunity to grow with professional players, and now they've become some of the best or the best in the league of all time. So people hating on the ratio, yes, we need to restructure it, maybe where they start, but you all need to shut up about that, because Andrew Harris is a prime example of why the ratio is successful and needed. So, man, shout out to Andrew Harris. He's awesome.
Yeah, fantastic career, man.
So we got a couple more shows this week. Join us as we look back at 2023 and the Montreal Alouettes. And then on Thursday, we have our big Grey Cup preview. So join us on both days on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, or whatever podcast provider you have. Benny, you have anything to say to our friends? Or are we done? Am I missing anything?
No, I think we got everything.
Right on. Benny, you have anything to say to our friends?
You know what? Thanks a lot for listening. Have a good week, even though you'll see us a few more times this week. And let's go Bombers.
Yeah, that's the quote. Just Bomber fans, be loud, get ready to party. I can't wait for y'all who are going to Hamilton. So yeah, go Bombers, go. Hey, friends and neighbors, don't forget to check us out online on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter at Ray Benny Sports. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel. Leave a like, leave a comment, tell us what you think.